fresh off his win in Texas, corporate Democrat Henry Cuellar is announcing a bill that would eliminate the minimum wage. Wait, what? Yeah. So now this is called the Worker Flexibility and Choice Act. So they're already using these very Orwellian names. Oh, yes, no, we're going to give you flexibility and choice, everybody. No, turns out this bill would amend the Fair Labor Standards Act of 1938 by establishing what is called worker flexibility agreements. So that's basically something that in order to get a job, your employer is going to force you to sign. And what it would do is it would make sure that certain workers would not be treated as employees for federal tax purposes and would not be subject to the minimum wage and overtime protections. The bill would also bar states from imposing their own regulations on the gig economy, which is mainly who this is going to affect, or at least who this is targeted at. But as you're going to see, it's also going to have wider impacts. Now, again, as I said, this will impact the labor force as a whole in the name of so-called flexibility. Now, flexibility for whom? Well, for companies to be flexible enough to lower your wages. They want your wages to be super flexible and make them bend down. Now, the bill was also co-sponsored by Republicans Elise Stefanik of New York and Michelle Steele. So you have a great company there. Also backed by the corporate lobbying group, the Coalition for Workforce Innovation, which is not at all in favor of innovation, but really finding innovative ways to screw people out of money, to screw workers out of their labor. Now, following the discovery of this bill, which was actually introduced on the 20th, but people just finally started paying attention to it. Labor activists and experts called it, quote unquote, unconscionable. According to Vina Dubal, professor at the University of California Hasties College of Law, this proposal would not only affect gig workers, but also carve workers out of minimum wage and overtime protections whenever an employer sets a work schedule using algorithms and incentives instead of providing secure hours. So if you're one of the millions of workers who don't actually work in a fixed schedule, who are at will, for example, employees, who are scheduled at will, I should say. Well, very likely that they could get you to sign something, or at least new employees to sign something that allows them to be opted out of the minimum wage. Because they're actually not really employees. They're kind of, but they're flexible. They're being flexible. That's what it is. Flexible. Now, in other words, said former New York Times labor reporter Stephen Greenhouse, it seems to empower any employer, not just gig companies, very important, to tell any worker, if you want to work for me, you must agree we won't follow minimum wage or overtime rules. Understand that this is what they want. This is what the far right wants and what corporations want. They want it so that they don't have to pay you the minimum wage. They don't have to, pay you for overtime. Also, they can pocket that money. They are more, they're more profitable, these companies, than ever before at any time in history. And yet they still want to force your wages down further. It's disgusting. And again, these are the people that pay people like Charlie Kirk to come out and say things. You know what we want to do? We want to go and, have people volunteer 20 hours a week for 2 years. Free. Oh, just free labor. Don't worry, it'll be good for you. No, it'll be good for the company that's literally exploiting you for free labor. Of course they want free labor. Now, Rebecca Dixon, executive director of the National Employment Law Project, also said the proposal is an attempt to capitalize on the notion that flexible working hours benefit workers. But because, she says, the Fair Labor Standards Act already is compatible with worker flexibility, which is why we already have worker flexibility, It would be a fatal mistake for Congress to create a carve-out for companies that demand worker flexibility agreements of their workforce. Instead of actually providing flexibility, said Duvall, as Uber, DoorDash, and Instacart have already done for their workforce, it would empower employers to force workers to work long and hard to eke out a living. So again, that's basically what this is about. If you want to work for us, you've got to sign this agreement that signs away your ability to get a fair wage. Disgusting. Now, that's no surprise. We know corporations want to do this. We know the right wing wants to do this. But it's also not a surprise that corporate Democrats like Henry Cuellar also want to do this, because that's who they work for. He sponsored this bill. And look, Henry Cuellar, we know he's anti-choice, anti-climate, pro-NRA, anti-labor. Obviously, he voted against the Protecting the Right to Organize Act twice, codifying Roe. But he has also taken a lot of corporate money. But what's really messed up about this, again, is the fact that we had a chance. There was a chance to remove Cuellar and replace him with a progressive who would have actually fought for us, who would have expanded labor rights, voted to expand labor rights, voted to expand choice, bring back choice, would have actually voted in favor of common sense gun regulation. And what happened? Well, we got close, damn near close, but you had Democratic leadership. You know, House Speaker Nancy Pelosi, House Majority Leader Steny Hoyer, House Majority Whip James Clyburn. You know what they did? They went out and they stumped incredibly hard for Cuellar. And guess what? Progressive Jessica Cisneros lost by just 289 votes. And now Cuellar is celebrating. This is how he's celebrating, by screwing over workers to cut the minimum wage for millions of people. And he's basically slapping millions of workers across the face while lying them about flexibility. Flexibility. Oh, you want to talk about flexibility? Flex this, bitch. All of you corporate Democrats who voted in favor of this and who didn't support Jessica Cisneros. That's for you. Look, again, I would love to say that, they didn't know. Pelosi, Clyburn, they made a mistake. They didn't realize that Cuellar was going to be like this. But no, they already knew. It wouldn't be true. They absolutely supported what Cuellar is doing. They know who he is. And that's exactly why they supported him. They work for the same people. They work for the same donors. The very ones that give them massive amounts of money in legal campaign bribes, campaign contributions. They work for those people. They work for the donors. They do not work for you, and never, ever will. Cisneros showed why voting in primaries matters. Absolutely. Primaries, primaries, primaries. We were so absolutely close. Instead, we're stuck with Cuellar.